Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over this pistol that you see in my hand. This is the Beretta APX Centurion. This one here is sort of the Glock 19 sized version of the APX. You guys have probably seen my review of the full size. They also make a shorter version with a 12+1 capacity. This one has 15+1 rounds for those of you guys who live in free states. They do offer 10 rounders for those of you guys that live behind enemy lines. So today we're just going to do some shooting with the pistol. We're going to get into the characteristics of it, what I think of it overall, basically how it works, how it functions, some of the unique features of it, its lineage. I'll get into that right now. This one was born out of the Army's Modular Handgun Program, or MHS system. Eventually, of course, as we all know, the M17 and M18, those contracts were won by SIG, but this pistol is sort of the outgrowth of it that Beretta introduced to compete with it. So we do have a modular chassis system, which certainly is good, but more details to come. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and thank the folks over at Sportsman's Guide who sponsored this video today. Code Guns and Gear will get you $20 off orders of $100 or more, if I could actually say it correctly, over there on their site. Where I can, I'll put a link down below for you guys to go check it out as well. So thanks to them. And we'll let the dogs take a look at this pistol, then get into the details. Getting into the details of the pistol, we'll start out here and sort of work our way up. I should mention it does come with interchangeable back straps. We have the medium on there right now, and we also have the small and the large. They are marked accordingly, S and L. Like I said, it's a modular frame, so you can actually get different colors of these if you guys want to have like a two-tone look or something like that. They are available out there, so if you guys are into that, hey, the world is your oyster. Let's get into the magazine here. The magazine is going to hold 15 rounds. One thing I really like about the APX design is the way that they design the mag interface with the pistol itself. So as you guys can see, it sticks out a good bit on the side there. So what that does is, should you get a double feed, it allows you to strip and rip and give you a lot of force to be able to pull that magazine out. Now, the early Gen 5 Glocks had that little cutout here up front. In my opinion, this is superior to the hole in the front because it's just more natural, number one, and it doesn't create an artificial pinch point. But dropping the mags is very simple. Obviously, we just hit the mag release, which is swappable. Of course, it comes on the left side of the pistol, but for you lefties, you can swap it. And you can see there the magazines come out with authority. They're well made, all metal magazines. I think spare mags, generally speaking, are going to run $30 to $35. And my full size one has actually orange followers. This one here has black followers. I'm not sure why that is, but it is what it is. You can see it engages there right up front, which makes it have the cut for the ambidextrous magazine release. The grip on the APX is one of its better features, in my opinion. It allows you to get really high up to keep the bore access relatively low. It points in a natural direction, similar to like M&Ps and 1911s, and it has well thought out grip texturing. So although this is the compact, I can still get a full-size grip, so there's no sort of like giving up anything and having to have your pinky hanging off here with this model. But the texturing is really cool. So basically up front here, on the front strap, we have very aggressive texturing. It almost is to the level of like a Glock RTF2, and the same is true here on the rear. Now, of course, if you don't like that for whatever reason, you can sand it down a little bit, but it does come with really aggressive texturing. But then here on the sides, it's kind of like equivalent to, say, like a Smith & Wesson M&P type of texturing there. There's some texture, but it's not a ton. So what that's great for is if you're carrying this inside the waistband, or if you're like, let's say, a police officer and it's outside, sitting outside the waistband, but interfacing with your uniform, it's not going to tear it up. And the same thing, it's not going to tear your skin up here as you have it against your body. I really think they thought that out well, and it just feels rock solid in your hand, and it allows you to get, like I mentioned earlier, a very high grip up on it with this beaver tail that's sort of built in. And as you can also see, the trigger reach is very short. So they made that backstrap come up in here, and then the trigger obviously is not too far away. So a lot of folks with smaller hands will have an easy time reaching this trigger. Not an issue for me, but it's something that I think some folks really will like. Continuing up the frame, you can see that the serial number is shown here, and again, it's modular, so the serial number is to the actual chassis itself, not to the grip, not to the slide, nothing like that, just that piece of metal we'll show you here in a second. Our slide lock and slide release is ambidextrous. It functions as such, so you can use it from either the right or left hand side. It's not so big that I had an issue with my hands accidentally hitting it like I do with some pistols, like a SIG P226 for example. Never had any interference with it, but it was also very easy to actuate as well. I think they did a pretty good job there on it overall. We have our takedown lever, which we'll show you here in just a second. And then moving forward, we have a 1913 spec rail. Now it's kind of short, as you guys can see. Some lights will fit, some won't. I tested the Enforce APLC and the Streamlight TLR 7 and 8. They will fit on there. With the TLR 7 and 8, you're going to have to select the 1913 insert that matches up with these. I'm not sure which it is offhand, but just know that you will have to pick one. Some of the larger lights may or may not work. Definitely just do a little research online before you buy it if you plan on using it with this pistol. The slide on the APX pistols is what everyone really talks about online if you look into these at all. Some folks really love them, some folks really hate them, but one thing I'll tell you is that they're well made, and they definitely are well machined. It's made out of one piece of steel. It's nitrided, so that way it has good corrosion resistance, good durability, good surface hardness. And although you can see some wear here, because I've definitely carried this pistol a good bit, even though on those wear spots rather, that nitride treatment is still protecting the metal, because it's not just a like a paint type of finish. It's an actual process that treats the metal and goes into the pores and actually imparts the properties like we talked about earlier into the entire slide. So that definitely is good. The pistol ships with 3-dot sights. They are steel, which is nice, again, versus some of the competitive options out there. We have our square notch here in the rear with the 2 dots. And then up front, you can see that the dot is larger than it is on the 2 rear ones. I really like that. It definitely aids to draw your eye to it, makes you focus on the front sight, which is, what a lot of us want to do when we're actually shooting pistols. I guess that could be a debate that you guys can have down in the comment section. Feel free to do so. One thing I should also point out right now is that the pistol is unloaded. If we go ahead and send a round in there, you'll note that the actual extractor here pokes out a little bit, so in low light you would be able to tactilely know that there was a round in the chamber. Just something to point out there. I wouldn't rely on it, but it is something that the pistol does offer. Disassembly of the pistol is pretty simple stuff. We're always going to want to drop our magazine first. As you can see there, it definitely kicks them out with some authority there, so that is nice. At this point, we're going to lock our slide to the rear by pushing up on our slide lock, like so. Make sure that it is unloaded, and it is. At this point, you have to push this little button here on the right side and rotate this lever down. So I'm pushing, and some people say it's like impossible to do. It's difficult. There's definitely some force there for sure. Some of them will want to flip back up too, like this one does. My full size doesn't have that tendency, but I've heard others say it. They're going to let the slide go home. At this point, you have 2 options, right? So you can either pull the trigger to disengage, or they say, Beretta says, you can push this little button right here to disengage the trigger, so that way you don't have to pull the trigger. I know some people are very against that. This is a standard Glock tool. I'm going to push in this thing, and we'll see if I can get it. I'm pushing hard, and it's not deactivating. So that's kind of been my experience with the APX, is that that button doesn't actually work. If you guys have experience where it does work, by all means let us know, but point in a safe direction, pull the trigger. At this point, your slide assembly will come right off. You can see our recoil spring and guide rod is stainless steel. Barrel here, I believe it's 3.7 inches, and it is nitrided just as the slide is. You can see it's got good machining all around, no crazy marks or anything like that, just like you'd expect from Beretta. Reassembly is basically the same thing in the opposite order, but one thing I wanted to point out here is this striker safety. So basically, as our trigger comes back, it's going to engage this striker safety, and that striker safety is this piece right here that comes up, as you guys can see, during the trigger pull. A lot of people have asked about that and thought that it might be a problem if for whatever reason you are firing and something was obstructing that. It just makes the trigger pull heavier. You can still pull the trigger. I can't see a realistic situation that that would ever happen though, but the internet is what it is, and people say that on there. So I just wanted to point that out. But reassembly there, we'll get everything locked into place, line everything up there on the guide rod rather on the rails. And one thing to point out while we have it apart is how beefy those rails are. Again, it's a modular system, and this can come out and go into another gun and another caliber, so it's sort of like overbuilt in that regard, which I don't mind at all. It definitely adds a little bit to the weight over some of the other strike-fired guns out there, but definitely makes it shoot smoothly rather as well. Lock the slide to the rear. The takedown lever there went home. Sometimes it doesn't. You just push it up, and at that point we're reassembled. And now, actually, with it reassembled, let's talk about that trigger issue. So as you guys can see, my finger is white from me pushing down on there. I can still pull the trigger, it just dents my finger. So I really can't see that ever being an issue. We have verified that the pistol is clear. Now we're going to check this trigger out a little bit. So it does have the little safety here, the articulating safety that you guys can probably see moving. I don't notice it to be a problem at all. It's nice and smooth on the rest of the trigger, very similar to like a full-size Glock, i.e. like a Glock 17 or 34. It doesn't have those serrations like the 19s and 23s do. But you can see there, that is your initial take up right there. And then at this point we kind of hit a wall, and it breaks relatively smooth. This one here on my trigger gauge breaks right at 5 pounds every time. Beretta's website says 6 pounds, but I can tell you this one's 5 pounds on the dot. And then we have our reset here. It's very tactile, it's very audible. And the break again. It's not as crisp as some triggers out there, like let's say the HK BP9 or like the Walther PPQ, but it's definitely a little bit more crisp than say like a Glock. So for anybody who's used to a Glock out there, this one will probably be an easier trigger to get used to and to sort of master, but it's definitely not so light that it would be unsafe for a lot of people. I personally would never change it out. Leave it as it is. I definitely like the trigger. Now we have our big brother here, the full-size APX, and then of course the Centurion here. There is one smaller model out there as well. It's going to give you 12+1 capacity, but it's very similar in pretty much every way, with the exception here of the length. Of course, the 17-round mags are what you get with the full-size versus the 15, and then here with the length as well, it's a little bit longer, and of course the barrel and slide are going to be longer. Even if you line them up, you guys can see the difference there between the two. This pistol here weighs 28 ounces unloaded with a magazine on my scale, and of course the pistol you guys want to see it next to is this mamma jamma right here. This is the Glock 19 Gen 5, so sort of the current competition that I really think the Centurion is gunning for, and for good reason. This is an excellent pistol. Glock 19s have been around for a while. They've been very, very popular. They have a good balance of weight, size, capacity, and all of those sorts of things, and simplicity. The APX definitely brings a lot of those same things to the table as well. This is that cutout I was talking about earlier, for those who are unfamiliar. But size-wise, what you'll see here is that the APX is actually a touch shorter in the slide, which I know could be important depending on what type of method you carry. Again, you're going to get about 3.7-inch barrel there versus the 4-inch with the Glock 19, so a little bit shorter there. But otherwise, it's pretty much identical in just about every way. The slide looks a little bit chunkier, but that's kind of a little bit of a visual illusion, simply because of these slide cuts here. They just stick out a little bit more, but the majority of the slide is going to be the same thickness as what you're going to get here on the Glock. We talked about the sights earlier. There are a number of aftermarket sights available for these. Beretta has a ton over on their website, whether you guys want fiber optic, tritium, whatever the case may be. I know Trijicon also makes their HDs, and I'm sure there's other companies out there making them as well. Holster options, there's a ton of them. Beretta did send this one out with the pistol for the review to try out. Leather, kind of old school, outside the waistband with a thumb snap. Of course, you can remove this if you want to just make it a standard open top holster. And this one here will actually should fit both, I believe, actually. It just, yeah, absolutely fits both the full size and the compact. So either way, you're good to go if you guys like the old school leather stuff. Again, plenty of Kydex holster companies out there making products as well. I'll drop a link below for the holster and the sights where I can. We've hit most of the important details. Two big ones that we always want to cover are going to be reliability and cost. So reliability-wise, it's been 100% reliable with anything we've put through it. The majority of what we've fed it has been 125 grain polymer jacketed Minuteman ammunition stuff. However, we've ran some HSTs, some gold dots, both 124 grain and 147 grain through it with zero issues. It's eaten them all up. So you can't do any better than that. We put about 800 rounds through this pistol so far. So definitely again, pretty good in that regard. Now the APX series has been out for a while. They've definitely developed a reputation for being very reliable pistols, and I see the Centurion as being no different. So reliability gets a go for sure. Cost wise, I think the MSRP on these pistols is going to be right around like $575, something like that. If you look around online, you can probably find them for about $50 cheaper. Again, where I can, I will put a link below down to it. So kind of pros and cons to it. Number one, I think it's super ergonomic. It shoots very flat. It allows you to get very high up on that slide, which I do like. It comes with decent sights from the factory, so that is good. Definitely better than Glock sights like the plastic ones, for instance, in my opinion. The trigger's pretty good. I think it looks good. A lot of people think it looks ugly, and that really has to do with the serrations here that run the full length of the slide. So for those of you guys that like to do press checks, of course, it gives you the capability to do that if you're into that kind of thing. And even if you want to come over the top and run it from the rear, you can do so as well. However, when you look at this, you would think that they'd be super grippy, but they're not. So when you get your hands really sweaty, or should they be bloody or anything like that, it doesn't give you as good a purchase as some other pistols out there. So that really is going to be my big con for this gun. And actually, it's really the only one I can think of. I don't mind the way they look. I think they look good, but you don't get as good a purchase, again, when your hands are either sweaty or wet or whatever the case may be. I would like them to be a little bit more aggressive if I could change anything on there. I really like the grip texture, trigger, we talked about all that stuff. So that's the one con that I'm going to give it. Other than that, I really like the gun. I like the full size. I like this one as well. So far, so good. If you guys have any questions about this pistol, anything I didn't cover, you can post those down below in the comments section. But the best way to get a response from me is over at my Facebook page. I tend to see the messages over there much more so than I do here on YouTube or Full 30, but feel free to comment away wherever you'd like. And thanks for watching. As always, if you guys are new here and you like what you saw, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I hope to see all of you in the next video.